Hello, welcome to this video. PHP is the most used backend programming language. It is the language for the web. A lot of people complain about PHP for many reasons. Some of them are understandable. Some are just lack of experience in the language, and I think some are even tech politics. In this video, I want to discuss how you should program in PHP in 2025. PHP is a modern, beautiful language that still runs the web. It will be here with us for a while. So why don't you embrace the latest changes? Make yourself very professional in the language. Become a leader that speak and teach best practices in the language. So who am I? Well, I've been programming in PHP for a very long time, and I have some windows open here that I want to talk about my experience just for 1 minute. So when I started PHP many years ago, it was classic PHP, index.php, include this, include that, right? We all know that, right? That time, the only way to do template is this Smarty templating engine. If you know this Smarty templating engine, then for sure you've been programming in PHP for a very long time. All right. Now, the first framework, web framework that I started using in PHP was CodeIgniter. I think CodeIgniter changed everything in PHP. Most people use CodeIgniter for huge enterprise projects. Beautiful framework, well documented, works great. It was developed by a company called Ellis Lab, I think, the same company that developed this expression engine, right? I'm taking you down history a little bit so that you know where I'm coming from. Now, what was wrong with CodeIgniter? Testing, a lot of people complain how difficult it is to write test using CodeIgniter. Now, when in CodeIgniter that time, there were no dependency injections. The usage of interfaces was very minimal, so you have everything as a whole value like concrete types. Why concrete types are great, sometimes they are very difficult to mock. How do you mock an email sending process? How do you mock a database operation? Things like that was very difficult to do in CodeIgniter. Then something else happened. The company left CodeIgniter, another company adopted it, but while that whole switching was happening, Laravel came. A different version of Laravel came that introduced some kind of new syntax, which was something like this actually, but that time, this route, it looks like a static method, but something else is going on. But that time was static method, but the syntax was very beautiful. A lot of people started moving towards that direction. Even some guys went on the side to create this full PHP that you have here, right? Great history. After this whole era, Laravel, Taylor went back to redesign Laravel to what it is today now, that introduced a different culture. The culture of testing, the culture of great documentation, beautiful UI for the framework and all that started in PHP. This is what I think. Now, why CodeIgniter was there were other frameworks too. Zen framework, there was Zen framework, Symfony. But what was wrong with Symfony and Zen framework? Symfony and Zen framework were designed as enterprise frameworks like Java for PHP. Everything was very complicated. In order to do something, you need to put together you need to like build your own framework, and things were a little bit unfriendly for beginners. So people were looking for something that provides most of the features that they want to use as a bundle and just start building their project. And of course, Taylor saw this opportunity and continued to build Laravel. A lot of people joined and they built even borrowed some of the utilities from Symfony, and they built a great framework, Laravel, and everything changed. Now, the biggest changes in the PHP community was people started embracing dependency injection and testing. Before now, there were no, of course, maybe there was some kind of dependency injection going on, but it wasn't popular. It wasn't like now. Why I'm talking about this, why I'm giving you this history is because I want to talk about something really important. So now we have Laravel. I also program in, there is this framework called Falcon, which is not really PHP because it is written in C very fast. I program in it as well. I did some work with Joomla, WordPress, Cake PHP. If you look at Cake PHP, for instance, let me go to the book. I programmed in Cake PHP for a while. If you go to, let's say, version 1.2 and you search for testing, you see there are no, this is the documentation, there are no section for how to test or anything. So testing was not there, or it was very minimal. All right. So what has changed? Everything in PHP community has changed. Symfony, Laravel, and many other frameworks now have all the tools for you to write great software, including PHP itself. But so I realized that even though, let's open the PHP website, even though PHP offers all these great features that has transformed the language from what people used to know to what we have now, a lot of people take this framework and they still write PHP code the old way. So basically they take something really new and try to convert it to old fashioned. And this is not good. This is not fair to the community. The community, we should be moving forward. I have seen new PHP code base that are like from 10 years ago, which is not nice. So this video, I want to walk you through code base that I have here, something that I put together to demo some of these ideas. So the first thing I want to talk about is tooling, like the tools or utilities that you need for your development. So let's start with that. When you open, when I open the make file, I have some commands here. The first thing I want to talk about is testing. Testing is super important. If you cannot test the code, don't write the code. Because if the only thing you are doing yourself is setting yourself up for problems. When you go to production, then you won't be able to sleep. Now, testing in PHP can be, you don't need two libraries actually. With PHP unit, you can write any kind of test. Most of the tests can be written with PHP unit. Of course, there is, if you want to write integration tests, there are other libraries and all that, but at least minimum, you should have PHP unit. I'm going to go through some of the tests and show you how to arrange the tests, how to do some mocking and all that shortly. Then second, relatedly to PHP unit, you need a way to monitor the code coverage. How many % of your code is covered by tests and how many are not? You need to also have that. Thirdly, you need a way to do static analysis. Static analysis is a way for you to catch bug early, way early during development. When you program in languages like PHP or Python, very basically dynamic languages, you don't have the static typing to enforce types. Even though this day PHP offers typing and all that, the static analyzers are great, they are super important, and you are going to need PHP stand for that. For coding standard, when you write your code, when you are working in a team, imagine some people want their curly bracket to be at the beginning of the line, some want it at the end of the line, some want maybe the parameters to have one space, some want it two spaces. How do you handle that? How do you agree or force people or your team members to program in the same way? Well, you don't have to do that. Everyone needs to agree to a certain standard. Okay, we want to adapt PSR 12 or whatever standard. There is a word standard from WordPress and other communities as well. We want this standard, and then you stick to that standard. Then you have this tool that can help you check for the coding standard if there are like minor things that needs to be fixed as well. This can also help you fix it. This PHP CDTF can help you do the fixing and all that. So all these tools that I have listed here, I'm going to have them in the code base, and you can clone this code, take the commands, install it yourself, and run it on your computer. It's very simple. This is the minimum that you need for your project. You should have this, and this setup should be part of your CI/CD process. When you push your code to GitHub, before any code review, everything here should pass. At least you should run, like I put everything together under this check, and when you run make check, it runs all the commands to help you fix your style, run your test, do analysis, and check the coding style, and all this result is printed and make sure that it passes before humans waste their time for code review. Now, on the testing, let's look at how the test is structured. If you go to PHP unit configuration here, it's very, very basic stuff. All the tests are in this directory. The test follows the same pattern. So for example, if you look at here, there is unit, entities, repositories, services. When you go to my source file, you see the same directory structure. You see entities here, repositories is here, services is here. Now let's open the entities. You see there is a comment test. There would be a comment class. So we open, and then this is a comment class. Post test, there will be a post class, right? Then the same thing with repository and so on and so forth. When you structure your code this way, your team members, they have the mental model of the structure of your code base, and they can jump to it directly. All right. So let's look at code coverage. When I let me open my terminal and then make test. If I haven't broken anything, then we should have the, okay. So when I run make test, this document was generated. Before I go through the document, let's go here. Let me close this place up. Let's open the command that I ran, make. This is the command that I ran, right? So I did make test. So it executed PHP unit, right? And I have the code coverage as well. You can, let me run the coverage as well. Make coverage. Okay, what did I do wrong? Okay, that didn't work, so I can copy. I don't know what I did wrong there, so I'm not going to waste your time trying to debug it. You see, I ran this and it works great. Now you have this output. If you use PHP Storm, PHP IntelliJ, or any of the JetBrains ID, you can run your commands directly here. You can run your tests here with coverage and everything. All right, but let's look at what we have. So I go to the source directory. This is my source directory, and as you can see, I have very low testing here. You see, let's open the services. Here, post service, all the green covered, the red not covered. It gives you great information about your code. Let's look at the entities. Post, we are 90% covered, and we can click on it to see what is not covered. You see, these two are not covered, and it's very simple. Everything is running on Docker. I can go to this is entity, We are looking at the post. That means we should be here. You see where convention is very important, and it's saying that we haven't covered get comment count and set comment count. And it's very easy. You can come here, public function test get comment and set comment count. And don't forget the return type always, right? We're going to create a post and we set it, we are set, and that's it. I'm going to go now. I can run PHP unit with coverage and we refresh. You see, it's covered. Great feedback, iterative process, works great. And this is how you look at, you continue to refine your project. Now, with test, I'm not afraid to change the code, right? So that is that. So let's go back to make. Let's say I come here, for instance, let's open one of the project where one of the controllers. Let's do something. Let's see. Let's say I leave it here, right? And maybe someone in your team is writing code like this. Might be a mistake or anything, but it's okay. We can come and say, let's run this command. I'm going to copy the full Docker command, right? And it said that, let's look at the output actually. It said that a total of 3 errors were fixed in 2 files. Okay, so let's go back to the file. This is one. Look at the bracket is down here. And this is the fun of it. It helps you fix all these errors, all these mistakes. I'm going to run it again. It ran and you see it formatted it nicely for you. So you don't even have to worry. You can, before you push your code to the repository, you run your command and then it helps you fix some of your mistakes. All right. And the other thing I want to talk about is the importance of mocking. Mocking can be a little bit controversial, but without that mocking behavior, it's very difficult to have like 100% test coverage. Let me give you an example. If we go into this directory structure, where is the repository? Here, for instance, let's take the post repository as an example. This code, don't worry about these lines. They are basically, IntelliJ want me to configure a database source, which I don't want to do, so we can ignore that for now. If you look at this post repository, it depends on the PDU library. This is our dependency. And we are injecting the PDU this way. This is different between how we used to program in PHP and now. The approach, the dependency injection approach, I am injecting it right here. That means it is possible for me to attempt to try and mock this PDU, which I'm going to show you in the test. Without this approach, it will be very tricky to test. We wrote our code to find the record that we want to find from the database and do everything that we want to do. And the question is this: how do you test this? How do you make sure that you are returning the type that you promised that you are going to return, which is this type, right? All right, then this is it. So we can go and look for the test. Since we know that the test will be post repository test, you can just search for it, post repository test. Let me check here very well. Test repositories. Okay, we have for the user. All right, let's look for the user then. With the same approach, we depend on the PDU and nothing different, right? Just the SQL is different. So open this up. This is, let me zoom the code a little bit. Look at the PDU that we depend on. The PDU here is a class, right? but we want to mock it, so we are bringing PHP unit mock object. This is coming from PHP unit. At the same time, this is a PDO. We also want to mock another object that is related to the PDO, which is the PDO statement. PDO statement is what returns from your SQL execution, right? Now, we created a mock version of them. The importance of this is you no longer have to connect to the database directly before you write your test. Okay? Then you don't have to worry about seeding your database, looking for data everywhere and all that. And look at what we are doing here. This create user is nothing. This is just a very plain object that creates random user, basically nothing special. And then this is our expectation. This is what we expect from the query that we want to run. All right. What are we doing here? We are saying that we are doing some setup. We are doing some setup that when we're saying that the statement object, when execute is called, we want you to return true. We are saying when fetch is called on you, we want you to return the expected record. We are saying when prepare is called, we want you to return statement. So when you call prepare on DB, which we are doing here, let me show you where we are doing it. Here. You see, we call fetch on this, and then we call prepare return statement. So you need to know the flow of your code in order to mock it. It's very important. It should play like music. You need to know the flow in order to create good melody. So you have all this set up, and then it becomes very simple. We initialize the repository, pass in the database object that we have mocked, and then we call the find and then do the assertion. That is it. So you should be writing code that very simple to understand, nothing tricky. We're not trying to do anything too tricky to show that we are too good. No, we just want to test our code. We just want people to be able to read our code nicely and debug easily when there is a problem. All right, so this is how you work with the mocking. You can absolutely mock anything. You can mock anything. So this is it. All right. This other thing I want to talk about is dependency injection. If for any reason, I want to show you, let's go to the one of the controllers, maybe we can go to something like this. Of course, I wrote this is a very simple framework I wrote myself. It doesn't have the things that you have in Laravel. I didn't want to use Laravel because I think it's going to take the fun away. People are going to think that it's all about Laravel. This has nothing to do with any framework. Should be a standard practice, and you should be able to apply this to any environment that you're working. So most things are still missing in the framework, and it's just for learning purpose, so I'm not going to update it actually. All right. In the create post controller, if you look at, we have 3 different objects injected here. There is a factory, a response, and then there is a post service. Most times these things are interfaces, right? And because they can be, when they are interfaces, then when we want to test this create post controller, when we want to test it, we can mock these ones as well, right? So the dependency injection is super important. In short, because I want to show how it works, I went ahead to write my own dependency injection here, which is, let me show you. Let me show it to you. Core services. This is HTTP. Here is it, container. And this is it. It's very simple. It recursively find the dependencies and then inject it, and the configuration is right here, services. You see, this is how they are injected. You can inject them using the function or directly like this. Nothing too fancy, but it works great. All right. So you have your dependency injection, and that helps you with testing. So when you go to your test, You do the same thing that we're doing here. Like, let's go to service this time around. You do the same thing. You see, we have some mocks, we're setting up some values, and those values have been set up to expect some kind of output, and that's what we are using. All right, so as you can see, PHP is not that bad, right? It's not that bad. Things have improved greatly, right? Right? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is types, right? So in order to talk about types, I want to open the browser real quick and let's look at something. PHP 8.4, this is the latest version of PHP 8.4, was released a few days ago, and it's quite interesting. Let's click on it and let me show you what's happening. Do you see how the language is improving? This class on the left, this huge class on the left that does very basic stuff, that sort of modify language and the country code, it can be now written like this. So if you are in a company and you are, you should be advocating for this kind of changes. Update your code base, embrace the changes in the community really, really quick. You can transform so much in your code base by just embracing the changes in the community instead of reading blog posts that are saying, hey, PHP is this, PHP is that. I bet you the people that speak very badly about PHP that probably have never been to PHP website in maybe 10, 15 years. So these are the things that you want to come and look at. There's, for me, I think the most exciting thing about this release is something on how we initialize classes. Let me show you. I think it's down. Yeah, here. Look at this is how we. Let's say you want to initialize the class, create an instance of a class and call a method on it right away. Before it was not possible. You have to do this long thing. Now you look at the wrapping here, right? You use a new PHP version, and then you cannot call the method. You need to also wrap it in another one like this. It has been changed. Look at the new one. Do you see the progress in the language? So things like this are super, super, super important for you to follow in the community. Things like, let's go to the code base a little bit. Entities, core, HTTP, enums, right? You can use enums to define like types that are, more like constant, but they are together, like union type. You can call it that way. There is something called union type, though. For example, you can do, let's say, let me open this quickly. Public function. I don't care about this sample. You can say, let's say string and maybe int, item, something like this. Of course, you don't want to do something like this, like string and int, right? So this is possible now. I saw something else that is also possible that you probably can do this, like, let's say the string, I think maybe string and int or something like I need to check the documentation again. So language is growing like super fast. A lot is changing. You cannot just be reading blog posts. Go to the website, see how things are working, and then change your code base based on that. Lastly, before we go, Docker. Docker setup is very important. I want to show you the Docker file that I'm using on this project. And this is it. If you use IntelliJ, PHP Storm, or even VS Code, you can set up your Docker file. This is PHP 8.3. I'm going to update it. And then set up your Xdebug so you can debug your code easily. Look at, very simple, and it works great. Then look at my Docker Compose, my Docker Compose, of course, uses the Docker file to run the code. And this is how I am working I don't need to have PHP installed on my system to use it. If I don't want PHP on my system, I don't have to install it. Everything can be Dockerized. So embrace Docker. If you look at all the make commands that we have, you see they are running in the container, right? This is the container called app that we're running. I can show you here. This is the app, right? The context is this dot, so it's going to pick up this Docker file. You should always use Docker Compose kind of setup to make sure that everyone in your team have the same setup. So it's super important. What else is left? I think this is it. This code base is on GitHub for free. You can download it, run it, and let me know what you think. Yes, well done. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.